Hi, it's Des here. I'm in Denver in Colorado. We're at CommvaultGO 2019. I have the pleasure of being joined by Don Foster. Now, Don is the Vice President for Storage Solutions at Commvault. Don, great to see you. Thanks for making time to catch up with me.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for the invite.
I want to have a chat about Hedvig. Now, we've seen it in the media. It's been talked about here at the event. So I don't think there's any surprise that Commvault has acquired it. I know, and people know the brand and the company as a whole. But I wonder if we could just kick off with, I guess, a 30,000-foot view of what Hedvig is, the key value prop from your point of view of where it fits, particularly in the ecosystem for Commvault.
Sure. So what Hedvig basically is it is a distributed storage platform. So it's multi-protocol. It can handle a multitude of different workloads. The founder, Avinash Lakshman, has a DNA that goes back to Facebook and Amazon. Yeah. He's been in the distributed systems for quite a long time. And in working in those different organizations, he realized that they were solving already for the data deluge problem that they were seeing.
Right.
And they've scaled hundreds of times the size of your typical enterprise today, right?
So hundreds of petabytes.
Yeah, they figured it out. And in looking at the way they've done the distributed system, he wanted to take that same sort of idea and apply it in a way that we could unleash that type of technology onto enterprises today, right? Where they could handle that data deluge, have a smart and easy way to kind of distribute that platform, and more importantly, solve some of the challenges of like hybrid cloud, data resiliency, location transparency, so you don't have to worry about picking up the data and the app to move it from one spot to the next, but you can actually just kind of re-provision where the app fires up and runs from. And it also solves a massive sort of data fragmentation problem. Because if you can run multiple protocols from one storage system, then you can start to reduce the number of silos that we see many enterprises create. So from a Commvault perspective, the way that this really fits in well with our software, right, becomes a great fit for what we can do in the secondary storage plane. We've had a vision for quite a while to provide sort of that software-defined or scale-out storage as a place of where we're going to land our information to as we protect it, archive it, manage it long term. Well, this gives us a solid platform and a way to accelerate that vision, even use some of those protocols for making it easier for customers to use that data, and it's really going to set us down a path for how we can accelerate that vision and help drive that sort of hybrid IT use case.
Perfect. And this is a market that's been waiting for a solution for some time, as far as I can tell. And I think it's exciting to see an entrepreneur like Avinash, who's obviously, as you said, solved the problem somewhere else in a unique use case such as the big mega media platforms like Facebook, who have all of those challenges, everything from the right to be forgotten in some cases through to GDPR and governance that comes at that level that not every enterprise has to deal with, but now bring it back to that enterprise consumer out-of-the-box capability. And I love the fact that it's a natural fit in the ecosystem, the stack that Commvault has. I'd love to just quickly, because I want to go into some of those use cases in a minute, but thinking about that sort of whole process of them joining your organization and being your first acquisition, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Would you mind just walking us and the viewers through maybe just that journey itself of the acquisition? So from the moment where it went from an idea to a conversation behind closed doors, to then the onboarding process to what we saw yesterday, which is two CEOs jovially talking about the announcement and launch in one of the most positive ways that you've seen. I mean, obviously, in the past we've seen acquisitions that don't always go well because one buys the other, but in this case it seems like it's a natural fit, common cultural fit, common behavior, great fit in the ecosystem.
Yep.
So what was that whole journey like as far as what you can share?
Yeah, sure, and as far as like a fit goes too, believe it or not, our offices in the Valley in Santa Clara, you can see each other's office out the window of the conference room. So it's literally like a half-mile walk and you're there. So that was just another interesting kind of fit sort of idea.
It's like kismet.
Yeah, exactly right. So I mean, we've always had this vision and a strategy that, okay, we know that as you think about where you're going to land secondary data, as you back up data, there's been all these purpose-built appliances, and a lot of customers have gone that route, but it gets expensive because of how it scales, the way you have to continue to kind of buy the same systems, and we knew that the web scale idea, seeing how other vendors had some success, was the way we wanted to drive our own backend platform. So, the first step was, okay, what can we use to start creating that? And you've seen some of the solutions that we've put forward.
Yes.
Super successful, made some things really simplified for customers. And we wanted to take that to the next level, right? So how do we continue to accelerate that vision of providing a really solid back-end storage platform? So our Chief Product Officer, Rajiv Kadamthrel, he's been kind of looking at some of these things, and so Rajiv has always kind of leveraged almost like a really smart collective think tank inside of Commvault.
Right.
Every once in a while I'd like to think I get pulled into it, maybe I don't, but they always have some awesome ideas that we tend to kick around and talk about. And right around the time that Sanjay had been on board for probably about a month or so, there were some of the conversations of, okay, like, hey, we're gonna continue to kind of press the gas in the company. We're going to bring in a new idea of what Commvault is. We want to start making sure we're prepped for where customer needs are going to be in 2022, 2023.
Right.
And that's instantly, at least from my understanding, where kind of these ideas started to pop up. And we started looking more in depth at some of these different companies. And we'd actually been talking with Hedvig a little bit, just kind of, nothing formally, but just talking on how we might be able to do some partnerships and what have you. It pretty quickly turned into hey, the cultures, like you said, these are a pretty darn good fit. Yeah. They're a really agile team. They love to be focused on really what the customer challenge is and how they can move to make that be fit and solved. And as we started to dig deeper, we realized there's really some really sweet spot alignment that we can do.
Some real synergies there.
From tying in APIs to being able to drive that secondary storage, to use it to make it resilient across multiple data centers, being able to provide a real object storage capacity as well, so it's not just being typical block writes, et cetera. And there's just a lot of synergies that we saw that was like, you know what, this starts to make sense to have a further conversation.
Oh, great.
And then of course from there, like you do with almost any sort of acquisition of this thought, we went through all the financial and technology conversations. We got to know each other's teams really well, and then here we land.
That's amazing. It's interesting how quickly that journey went, because as the first acquisition for Commvault, often the first one is either really good fun or really bad, but this appeared to be really good fun, and I think because of all those things you're saying there, that from the moment it seemed to be an idea to actually happening, I think a lot of organizations are going to look at that and think, well, we should learn how you went through the process and gain that insight, because it was one of the most successful stories I've seen for a long time from an acquisition of like-minded companies. Yeah. And of course, we've had some big announcements here, but it stood out as a beacon of success.
Well, I'm not sure, I would like to call it a success now. We have some work to do. Maybe if we talk again in a year's time frame, the next go, we'll be able to showcase how much of a success it's actually been.
I have every confidence that is definitely going to be the case. I will not cross my fingers, it's not necessary. So let's go back to some of the use cases we talked about, because I think viewers are going to be really keen to learn about not just the way it's been applied currently, but where might it go, because Commvault's famous for building a platform and ecosystem that does one thing, but then has the ability to go very, very broad and very, very deep. So you don't just you're not just a backup company, you're a platform and ecosystem. Right. And now even with Commvault Activate, for example, you were the first customer, you used it yourselves, and then customers got access to it, and now you've got third parties plugging into it to use some of the machine learning and artificial intelligence that we might not have previously expected, right?
Sure.
I imagine, maybe just walk us through some of the typical use cases that Hedvig's had so far, and then we'll get into some of the outliers after that.
Yeah, for sure. So like one of the main typical use cases, backup storage consolidation, right? We talk about consolidating backup solutions, eliminating silos. One of the main areas that Hedvig has seen a lot of success is, all right, we have a large customer that wants to really simplify the management of multiple storage silos. Hedvig has deduplication, these capabilities built in, so awesome. I'm going to point my Veeam and my net backup and all these things right to this one storage platform. And it's been a great use case. They have a number of successful customers still adding on and doing that as we stand today. It's interesting from a Commvault perspective as well, because as we start to build out solutions and we use them as our own backup target, well, instantly we can talk to our customers that maybe don't want to bite off the entire solution at once, because making a transition for backup isn't always the fastest thing in the world. But if you can start to consolidate other parts, it makes it easier, and it allows us to kind of do that. We'll solve this one major challenge for you, give you a storage platform that over time, as we figure out how to better consolidate, that's a good fit. So that's interesting. You switch over to the core business of Hedvig, what they've been doing before the acquisition, outside of the backup space or the secondary storage space. They do have object storage capabilities, and they're definitely using that as a solution for customers for that secondary object location. But they also have some really fantastic capabilities when it comes to sort of the new age applications in containers, Kubernetes, even in some virtual environments. Some of their most successful customers have really understood that, okay, this storage platform, this distributed storage platform, what it really is a distributed storage platform that enables a level of programmable infrastructure. So if I want to build a private cloud, if I want to enable non-IT folks to get access to resources, whether it's a zero-touch provisioning play with IT, I can put together the necessary provisioning portals that link together all the resources. They can just make the ask, and I'll deliver, and I don't even have to touch it.
Yeah.
And so we've been super successful in working with different customers around the Kubernetes and Red Hat OpenShift space, as well as in some VMware and OpenStack and KVM spaces, where that's really what the customer's just looking for. It's just going to be the actual deployment of resource when I need it. So yeah, that's a little bit more in the sort of the primary space, but that's a great fit for what the Hedvig platform delivers.
And it's timely because I think, as we've seen in the last 2 days here alone, that digital transformation is not just a desirable anymore, it's a necessity, and everyone's got to go through this journey. And I think cloud and cloud native is the same, right? I mean, everyone's refactoring their code, they're containerizing it, predominantly in the likes of Docker. They're looking for DevOps and automation and orchestration, and you've got the likes of Kubernetes there as the predominant platform. As you said, you've got partners like Red Hat with OpenShift who have just literally taken a dramatic lead in that space, and you guys leverage that properly. And now inside your own platforms, you're going through that whole journey. I'm sure we're refactoring your own platforms, your agents, and as we saw with Metallic, the agent comes down, it's this tiny, beautiful thing that just deploys itself and is essentially a cloud native, no matter where it runs. So I think it's timely that you've got not only just this acquisition, but this capability that they have, because this is a wave that's already happened. Customers that are already coming to you asking for it, now you've got a whole end-to-end story for that, all the way to what Metallic might even do as well, right?
That's right.
But I think that next tier is going to be, well, we've got object storage, we've got stuff on multiple clouds with that multi-cloud, private, public, hybrid. We've got it inside containers, we've got it inside VMs. This is such a Cambrian explosion, not just complexity of data, but complexity of where the workloads are running and need access to the data securely to be able to read it and treat it, but also back it up.
Yeah, well, and another angle to that too, right, is the way that it handles resiliency.
Yeah.
So it's a distributed platform that can literally cover multiple locations, even into the cloud. And the way it handles that is, as it has to do a write, right? As a write gets placed in the system, it has to get at least 2 acknowledgements that in distributed architecture it's been placed before the atomic call's been down, right? And then of course, the 3rd or 4th or whatever you're replicating out, those can happen asynchronously. So you can already give yourself a very distributed, resilient platform for how that will function of its own. Well, now apply that into a cloud idea. And this is another really interesting use case. Think of one that maybe wasn't on the forefront of our mind until we started to really dig into it. So AWS and Elastic Volumes, right? So you have an EBS volume, you're going to now start running production applications in AWS. However, you have a challenge, and that is similar to the power going out or maybe having an outage. Then we know it still does happen. How do you ensure that you can make that data instantly available somewhere else, right? Maybe a different region of the cloud, something that's completely separate infrastructure. Well, AWS doesn't have the built-in capability with that today. No. You have to do a snapshot, S3 bucket, replication, it's just a whole lot of work. If you can put Hedvig as a layer in between that, just like you would in your own data centers, your own locations, you can now co-locate that data, and if you have an instance where you need to fail over, well, the orchestration capabilities that Commvault have can help you take those virtual machines, swap them, and have them basically up and running in a matter of moments.
The thing that really struck me when I started reading more about it, having seen the brand but not actually having got hands-on, was, we're familiar with things, the whole big data, quote unquote, world saw us understand what Hadoop did. And all of a sudden we were deploying the likes of, say, a Linux cluster and putting Hadoop on top of it, which gave us the ability to do distributed storage and distributed compute. So we understood that layering, and then we had other platforms that do stream analytics, and we had Cassandra and so forth. And so now I look at where Hedvig is, and it's like, well, it's just a natural fit, because now it's taking away some of the issue of not just storing data, as you said, in a cloud potentially where something can go out, but I'm storing it in that format in a distributed way, and potentially in multiple regions.
You got it.
Now that gives me a great disaster recovery capability. It also makes archiving potentially easier because you can use Commvault's capability to move that somewhere else, potentially on Glacier. But it also seems to me that it's a great opportunity to then look at additional use cases of things like edge compute. Because not only, we're sort of still thinking about centralized locatedly, but if I have a workload here at 9 o'clock, say in Sydney, 15 hours later, it's going to be busy in Denver. I imagine it can move that data around, not just from a redundancy and a backup point of view, but also from a workload point of view.
Well, and as 5G becomes more prevalent, and you start looking at more edge compute from a, in a space that you wouldn't normally think of, those sort of ideas really become even more interesting, right?
Yeah, and you throw IoT on top of it, and all of a sudden it's a match made in heaven,
That's right, you got it. And then those are some of the things that we started to really see as part of, okay, it'll be super relevant today, even more relevant for us as a company tomorrow and in the future, and as things continue to kind of morph and change this more sort of cloud native and sort of containerized application space, you're going to have to think differently to solve the challenges. You have to think differently about how you're tracking, providing the same level of rigor of governance to how these new apps are being built. And with that, I mean, we really do believe that having an integrated infrastructure has data management and the infrastructure together will help solve some of those future challenges.
Yeah, I think the days are well gone now, right, where you can think independently in silos for, you know, this is where my business logic goes, where my development goes, my test goes, my DR, my archive, my traditional backup on and off site. It's literally one integrated stack. And in fact, I had a conversation with someone yesterday from University of Canberra that you've managed to do a fantastic project with. In 2013, they had a building that was being refurbished and they had to move their infrastructure, and in 2017 they wanted to then add to that with archive. And what was interesting was that when they looked at all this, they were treating each of their little pieces of like, we're doing a full backup and snapshotting everything. It was taking like 3 months, he said. Now it's just happening seamlessly, and it's like 6 times faster and 10 times more cost effective.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until they had that trigger. But now I think companies have the opportunity to go, well, actually we're going to deploy something new, or we're going to acquire something or buy a new product. Let's now apply what Hedvig can do from the front. Let's proactively integrate and design that as opposed to being reactive. And I think that more than anything is the thing that I've gained from listening to the keynotes and the talks on the floor here from your team, is that I can now proactively integrate this into my stack, whether it's existing in legacy infrastructure or all new from a startup, and have that built in the DNA. And I think that goes back to the culture that Commvault brings to these things, and obviously Hedvig's now inheriting that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, it's an exciting future. Well,
it is.
Don, it's been fantastic to catch up with you, and thanks so much for making time to catch up on camera, and I really look forward to what the next 12 to 18 months holds for us, because I think that the next shift I'm going to see is that customers are going to wake up to the capability that that you've now got at their fingertips, and not just deploy it for those traditional use cases, but as they have with many things with your traditional Commvault products, come and say, well, we want to turn it sideways. Will it still work?
Yeah.
Last quick question for you before you go.
Sure.
Key takeaways from the event yourself. I mean, it's an exciting event. I'm a big fan on people who are tuning in to have something actionable. From the Commvault point of view, what kinds of things would you like them to be doing if they're not here at the event? Obviously, if you're at the event, you've been at the keynotes, you've seen them on the floor.
Yep.
For folk who are not at the event but tuned in, what are the 2 or 3 things you'd love them to do as far as, beyond visiting the website, maybe reaching out to a partner? What's that process of reaching out, getting a conversation going, and potentially doing some trials and get it in the labs, or even put it in production?
Sure, even though there's a little bit of a, call it internal competition between my Metallic friends and ourselves on the Hedvig side.
I knew that was going to happen, but that's okay.
I will actually absolutely say, like, if you don't know the experience from Commvault and you want to see really what this new era of Commvault's all about, you have to go to Metallic and at least give that a try, because it will be eye-opening. And it will also very well showcase where we're trying to take things from a technology perspective.
Fantastic. And there's a free trial.
And it's a free trial as well, yeah. So
I did it last night in my hotel room.
You did?
Yep.
And
18 minutes.
18 minutes. How about
18
that?
18 minutes, and my laptop there, and one of my servers up on AWS, currently being backed up right now.
That's fantastic.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the easiest things to do. I think the other thing is, not a lot of people know this, but we've been working fairly diligently over the last 6 to 8 months on really revamping some of our YouTube channel.
Right.
And so we've got, I think, about 24, 25, some odd technical YouTube videos, about 3 minutes in time. It's things like how we can interoperate with Splunk, how we do a VM recovery, to how we can do a complete migration to the cloud of like an Oracle database, right? So things like that. There's a lot of good video content out there as well. And then post-Go, we'll be making a lot of the content that is here available for consumption.
Okay, fantastic.
So it's another great way to, if you couldn't make it here and you're watching through the digital channels, that you can still get your hands into the content and then start to learn more and kind of find ways that it might be applied to your business.
And I guess reach out to a Commvault integrator or partner or reseller and just get that conversation going.
Absolutely.
Well, fantastic, Don. Well, great insights on what you've done with the organization to acquire the company and some of the use cases. As I said, really exciting future in the next 12 to 18 months when people actually challenge you with things you hadn't seen before.
Indeed.
And I look forward to hopefully coming back and, as you said, having that conversation in 12 months as to what happened.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time.
Looking forward
and
to
great
it,
to see
Des.
you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.